What's up, y'all? I'm here. You're here. Now let's talk Venom. So, Venom is the very first film from Sony to start off what has been called the Venomverse. They've given it a name, which I really don't like that name. So, I'm going to just continue to call any movie that comes out with it, or, in connection to it, part of the Venomverse. And that's what it's going to be named as. And just simply put, this movie isn't great. This movie is adequate at best, average. It is above Ang Lee's Hulk movie, but it's not that far from it. It's more entertaining and all that stuff, but it has a lot of problems. So it has Tom Hardy in the star role as Eddie Brock, aka Venom, which I found out that he does do the voice for Venom, so that actually adds a little bit more to it. And let's go ahead and get into this movie. So, I don't want to start off on a bad note, but this movie, the beginning seemed very rushed and could have took a little bit more time to set up things. Literally, the movie starts off with the symbiotes crashing to Earth. And it's like, I don't know, maybe they could have had a little bit more to the beginning. And then that happened maybe about 5, 6, something, almost 10 minutes worth of filming before, we got to that part. But hey, whatever. And I don't know. Tom Hardy to me is just not believable as an investigative reporter, but I'll give it to them for trying though, because he is definitely no Bane in this movie. Now, as I'm watching Venom, certain scenes move like they're missing the scene before as the lead up to a certain moment. Like there's a scene where someone is following Eddie and he knows it, and it jump cuts from the street where he's suspicious to him in the store where he starts talking out of nowhere, seemingly like he's talking to himself, and he ends up exposing the woman. And there is nothing in between that brings it all together that would have made those scenes come across a little bit better, because if they would have had something to where he ends up looking back and she kind of like hot dips off, and then he walks into the store and it shows her following him, and then you kind of see where it's going, and then he just starts talking out of nowhere, then it would have made sense. But it goes from him being suspicious, seeing no one follow him, and then he's in the store where he just starts talking to himself. It was like, did I miss something? What the hell? Because when he starts talking to himself, it's like, it kind of throws me off. And I'm like, who the hell is he talking to? And the movie is honestly boring until we get to the Venom Eddie combination, and then that's when the movie gets a hell of a lot better. The Venom and Eddie relationship actually starts off pretty good, and it works throughout the film. Tom Hardy does an amazing job playing Eddie Brock and how he reacts to the symbiote taking over. He is hilarious in just his reactions to everything that's happening around him, with Venom eating people, biting off heads, and just the, like how he reacts to his body just being hungry once the symbiote takes over inside of him and everything else. And I felt like he played it really good. Especially the restaurant scene is funny as hell. And that was just one of the best parts of the movie. And Venom's design is actually pretty damn good, and it is way better than the third Spider-Man installment from the Sam Raimi films. And as far as Eddie and Ann's relationship in this movie, with their chemistry, it just was not the best and not very engaging, and one of the worst things about this film. It was poorly handled and not really explored, or just didn't have enough time spent on it to be something at least passable, because it wasn't even that. And I'm not blaming Michelle Williams, because she is a really good actor, but her portrayal of Ann was just decent enough, but the character isn't written that good to make the character entertaining or even fun, or at the least bit intriguing. She really just comes off as a forgettable character. I mean, Tom Hardy by himself is pretty decent, but them two together, they don't come across as, really likable or engaging in the least bit, no matter how hard they tried to make it that way. But for the most part, the movie really does have some good action sequences, especially the motorcycle chase scene. I really did like that. And Carlton Drake could have been actually a really awesome villain, but no character development was done for him to make him the least bit interesting. And I believe that he had more depth and layers to him that could have been explored, because they set up certain things in what he says in the film that kind of hinted toward a philosophy that could have been touched on more heavily, but wasn't set up right, so it really had no point to it. And as far as Riot goes, he seemed more shoot into the movie than anything else. The symbiote travels throughout the movie in different bodies and only shows up in the third act to have the showdown with Venom that was super sloppy at best. Because their fight was just reminiscent of the Transformer fights, where it's just a whole lot of visual noise with just things happening with no visual sense of what is actually happening. And to be honest, I really didn't like how Venom was written and presented in the movie. It made him seem weak, even though it didn't come across that way physically. It's just the conversations that he's had with Brock that made it seem that way, and I just wasn't a big fan of it. And revisiting this, I completely forgot that there was a Stan Lee cameo in this movie, and it really did put a smile on my face. And the PG-13 rating bothered a lot of people, but for me, it really didn't bother me. It's watching this movie, I didn't really care for it. Could have been R, and it probably would have came across the same way. So there's that. And the post-credit scene with Woody Harrelson to set up Venom 2, where he will be playing Carnage. It was okay. It wasn't one of the best end credit scenes, but it was just basically just a setup for, the next film. And of course, the other post-credit scene was a scene from Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse. But other than that, the movie for me is a miss. It did have some good things that I did enjoy about it, but it had more going against it than it did have going for it. And the relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom could not save this movie from all the other flaws that it has. And it just wasn't a truly enjoyable experience. Even though I did have a little bit of fun with it, it just wasn't enough for me to want to constantly rewatch this movie and just, love it. So there's that.